99% think mindfulness is acceptance. The Buddha disagreed. Here's why. Back in the 19th century, when the word mindfulness was coined to translate the Pali term Sati, it was the perfect word for the job. It was related to a phrase that's often repeated in churches, to be ever mindful of the needs of others. In other words, you keep their needs in mind. You take them into consideration as you go through the day in all your activities. And even though the Buddha has you be mindful of other things, that instruction is a form of mindfulness in the sense that he was talking about keeping something in mind as you going through your activities, reminding yourself of what's important to act on, what values you want to express in your actions. In the intervening years, the meaning of the word has changed, getting further and further away from what the Buddha meant by the word. It would be good to recover the original meaning of the word and put it to use. We live in a time where simple acceptance is not an option anymore, if it ever was. There are things you have to accept, but there are other things you shouldn't accept at all. There's one passage where the Buddha says that if you see something unskillful coming up in the mind, you're mindful to get rid of it, and you're mindful to give rise to skillful things and to maintain them. In other words, you don't simply watch things coming and going. You try to make good things come, and you try to prevent them from going. You're mindful of this because you remember that everything in the world that you're going to experience is going to depend on the skill with which you treat it. That requires you to train the mind so that at all times, in times of peace, in times of no peace, in times of illness, in times of no illness, the mind is ready for whatever comes. Because the potential for aging, illness, and death is always there. The potential for social unrest is always there. Think of those dangers the Buddha has the monk in the forest reflect on. Aging can come, illness can come, death can come, society can fall apart. I need to develop an attainment that makes me safe, so that even when these things do come, I won't have to suffer. That may seem selfish, working for your own well-being that way as everything else falls apart, but you're not making things fall apart. And part of the practice, of course, is generosity, virtue. You give things. You give of your time. You give of your energy. You give of your knowledge. You're happy to share what you have. And then you refrain from harming. These are things you want to keep in mind at all times. Otherwise, the path won't develop and you won't find that safe attainment. As the Buddha said, the practice of virtue, the practice of concentration, the practice of right view, the attainment of release, all of these things require mindfulness, that you keep your priorities in mind and don't let yourself get waylaid by the latest things that are being shouted at you through the media, through whatever you hear around you. You've got to keep your priorities straight, and your number one priority is that you have to develop good qualities inside. In the list of the strengths, mindfulness comes between effort or persistence on the one hand and concentration on the other. And the three are closely related. I've seen it explained sometimes that the Buddha taught two different paths, the path of effort and concentration on the one hand, and the path of mindfulness on the other. And the two, as they're explained in that system, are very, very different, but the Buddha never separated these things out like that. There's a passage where he talks about the need to develop purity of view, purity of mind, in other words, concentration, and purity of virtue. In every case, it requires a series of qualities that all go together: desire, effort, diligence, endeavor, relentlessness, mindfulness, and alertness. So mindfulness fits right there in that series of very proactive qualities. You keep in mind that you've got to stick with this. After all, with your virtue, you want to make sure that you stick with your virtue even when things get very difficult. If things break down outside, food becomes hard to find, other things become hard to find, can you guarantee to yourself that you're not going to stoop to some unvirtuous actions in order to get what you want? You've got to create a state of mind where you know for sure that you're not going to stoop in that way. Even though you may feel tempted, you know that you have the strength and restraint to just say no. That requires desire, effort, diligence, endeavor, relentlessness, mindfulness, and alertness. All those qualities together. The same when you're buffeted by the winds of good and bad news. You want to maintain your steadiness of mind, because you know how you're going to react will be a lot more reliable if you can maintain your even keel inside. If you have a sense of well-being inside, it's a lot easier not to give in to influences from outside. Again, this is going to require desire, effort, diligence, endeavor, relentlessness, mindfulness, and alertness, all acting together. In terms of purity of view, you want to remember that the real suffering that weighs the mind down does come from inside. Things outside may get bad, but you don't have to suffer from them. You keep that in mind, which means again, that you turn your energies to training the mind. You train your desire, your effort, your diligence, your endeavor, your relentlessness, mindfulness, and alertness. You keep this set of values in mind, and you remember that this is all for the sake of release, for the sake of freedom. So anything that would bind you down with passion, you've got to work to free yourself from it. Again, you need relentlessness and mindfulness to pry yourself free. Even, as that passage says, with the things that would bring you to release, there comes a point where I have to let them go too, for the release to be total. You keep that in mind so that you're not just holding on to the path. Remember the image of the raft. You get to the other side of the river, you put the raft down, but in the meantime, you learn how to hold on to the path in a skillful way. The sutta, where the simile of the raft comes, also has the simile of the water snake. You need to get something from a snake, say its venom to make an anti-venom. So you have to grasp the snake in the correct way. In the same way, you have to learn how to grasp the Dhamma in the correct way. We're not here to engage in arguments and debates. We're not here to say that we're better than other people because of our views, or that we have to impose our views on other people. That would be like grasping the snake by the tail. The snake would turn around and bite you, but you still have to grasp the snake if you want to get its venom. In other words, as you're practicing, you have to hold on, but hold on in the right way. You're holding on for the sake of cleaning up your own mind. If you hold the Dhamma in that way, it's like holding the snake right behind the head with a forked stick. The snake can writhe around and curl around your arms, but it's not going to do any harm. So you want to make sure that as events get difficult, and even when events are not difficult, and you start getting complacent, you keep in mind what your values are. Keep in mind what you need to do, because that's what mindfulness is for. It directs your actions. It points the mind in the direction of concentration, because you know that that's going to be your most stable and reliable state, and it gives direction to your efforts in general. That way, you do keep in mind what is really important. You do keep in mind what you have to do. You're not just here looking at things, accepting whatever. I was reading recently an article saying that mindfulness is basically a matter of watching with equanimity. Well, equanimity sometimes is a good thing to have on hand, and sometimes it's not. If it makes you complacent, if it makes you indifferent, makes you apathetic, then that's the wrong quality of mind. Equanimity, to be good, always has to be combined with other skillful qualities, and mindfulness is what you use to remember when different qualities are useful and when they're not, how you have to combine them, all the lessons you've learned. Now, you don't memorize those lessons and run them through the mind all the time, but you have them at your fingertips. This is one of the reasons why we keep the mind still. When it's still, it's as if all the drawers of the mind where all your valuables are stored are available. You know where they are, so that when you need something, you can pull it out. When you don't need it, you can put it back in the drawer. But if the mind is a whirlwind, then the dust and whatever else is stirred up by the wind will make it impossible to see where the drawers are. But when things settle down, then you can see clearly. Here's the drawer I need for dealing with difficult things outside. Here's the drawer I need for dealing with lust inside. Here's the drawer I need for dealing with jealousy, anger. The drawers are all available. So your persistence, your mindfulness, and your concentration all go together. And that's how they all become strong. That list of desire, effort, endeavor, diligence, relentlessness, mindfulness, alertness also appears in a sutta where the Buddha is talking about the attitude you should have if your head were on fire. You bring all those qualities together to put the fire out. You remember what's really important in life and you focus your efforts there. And as for any attachments that would pull you away from what's important, you're mindful to let them go. That's when you see how important it is to keep your mindfulness strong. Because in that way, it does become your refuge. Of the various qualities of the path, the Buddha focuses on mindfulness as your refuge, so that all the other things you've learned about the path will be there at your fingertips. Otherwise, the things you've learned wash away, and they serve no purpose. But if you can store them away in the drawers of the mind and keep yourself calm, so you know where the drawers are, then all the good things you've learned will be right at hand and show their real value right when you need them. Study to practice. When people have a lot of free time, they tend to spend it watching their screens, their portals to the world, taking in a lot of information and misinformation. You have to keep asking yourself when it comes in, these people who are telling me this, why do they want me to believe this? Because there's no guarantee that the information that's coming in is going to be true or useful or timely. In a lot of cases, the people who provide it call it content. In other words, taking no responsibility for the quality. It could be shredded newspapers. It could be grey fluff, like the stuffing in stuffed toys. That's all they guarantee. It's content. As long as you have the time and you've been meditating, it's good to take some time to study the Dhamma, to take in something of substance, something you can rely on, something you know is true and beneficial and timely. The Buddha said that when you study, it's like the weapons of soldiers defending a fortress. You have the tools you need in order to deal with the enemies, i.e. unskillful mental qualities, unskillful emotions, as they arise. Several years back, I was invited to a Dhamma center up in Vancouver. They'd asked me to talk about why it's necessary to study. For them, the question came from the fact that they had heard that mindfulness was simply accepting whatever comes up and being non-reactive. And what do you need to study in order to do that? I pointed out first that that's not what mindfulness is. As the Buddha said, there's a lot to mindfulness. He said that if he lived for 100 years and people were to ask him questions about mindfulness for that entire 100 years, aside from time for sleeping and time for eating, defecating, At the end of the 100 years, he still wouldn't have come to the end of the questions about mindfulness. It's that bigger topic. And you look at the basic formula. It's not just accepting. Mindfulness is keeping something in mind. For instance, when you're keeping the breath in mind, that's body in and of itself. You're ardent, you're alert, you're mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. There's a lot to discuss there. How do you stay with the body in and of itself? How do you stay with the breath in and of itself? When greed and distress with reference to the world come up, how do you deal with them? And what's the skillful way to be alert, to be ardent? What's the skillful way to be mindful? After all, there are lots of things you could keep in mind. You want to have your memories of what works and what doesn't work in the practice at your fingertips, but you don't have keep running them through your mind all the time. As for alertness, you're not just alert to whatever. You're alert to what you're doing. You're alert to the results that come from your actions. And then you're ardent. And here's a huge field right here. Even the people who teach mindfulness as acceptance or meditation as not doing anything will admit, when you pin them down, that when unskillful states come up, you have to work with them. And it's precisely here that studying the Dhamma is really useful, because it gives you tools to work with them. For instance, remember the Buddha's way of dealing with anything unskillful that comes up. There are 5 steps. The first 2 have to do with establishing the fact that they are fabrications. In other words, you see things arising and you look for the origination, what's causing them. You see things passing away and you ask yourself, when they pass away, what passes away with them? Why do they come? Why do they go? When you see that they're fabricated like this, coming and going, it gives you a sense that you can change them. You're not stuck with an emotion. You don't simply say, well, that's what's there in the present moment, so I have to accept it. If it's going to lead you to do unskillful things or it's going to create unskillful habits in the mind, you've got to get rid of it. Now this may take some time, watching it, but you watch it for the purpose of getting past it. This is where the Buddha's teachings on the 3 fabrications come in useful. You look at the way you're breathing. Say anger comes up. How are you breathing around the anger? That's bodily fabrication. Then there's verbal fabrication. How are you talking to yourself around what's got you angry? The technical terms are directed thought and evaluation. Where are you directing your thoughts? What are your standards of evaluating? What's worth thinking? What's not worth thinking? How to think? How not to think? Then there's mental fabrication, perceptions and feelings. What are the perceptions that aggravate the anger? What perceptions might help put the anger aside? The same with the feelings. What kind of feelings are you focusing on? The Buddha gives lots of recommendations for how to deal with these 3 kinds of fabrication. He tells you even how to breathe. Breathe in a way that gives rise to rapture. Breathe aware of the whole body. Breathe in a way that calms the breath. It makes you sensitive to the different kinds of fabrication so that you can figure out, when the mind is sluggish, what do you do to gladden it? When the mind is scattered, what do you do to steady it? When the mind is burdened with anger, what do you do to release it? He gives you ways to think. That's verbal fabrication, different ways of thinking about anger. Like his statement that there's only one thing whose killing he approves of is the killing of anger, and he recommends skillful feelings and perceptions. How do you perceive your relationship to the person you're angry about, or the situation you're angry about? Can you perceive it in a different way, where it's not oppressive? How can you muster some goodwill to bring to the situation? Try holding in mind the perception that your goodwill is as large as the earth. People can spit on the earth and urinate on the earth, dig around in the earth, trying to destroy it, but the earth is just too big. Your goodwill is as large as the river Ganges. People can bring a torch to try to burn up the river Ganges, but water doesn't burn. Your goodwill is like space. People can try to write in the space, but there's nothing there to receive their writing. In other words, people can say things, but you're not presenting them with a little chalkboard on which to write their aggravating statements. So the statements just float away in the space. These perceptions are really helpful. And then as for feelings, the Buddha says don't just stick around with feelings of the flesh. Try to create some feelings not of the flesh. Even pain not of the flesh is better than the pursuit of pleasures of the flesh. Pain not of the flesh means realizing there's a goal that others have attained that you haven't attained, but it could be attained if you put some work into it. There's a pain there. There's work to be done. But that pain inspires you, motivates you, rather than simply having you turn around and around and around, searching for pleasure and running into pain, holding on to a pleasure until it turns into a pain. Pain not of the flesh provides you with a way out, through which you can create pleasures not of the flesh, i.e., the pleasures that come from concentration. So when you study, you get lots of recommendations for how to take apart unskillful emotions and how to fabricate skillful emotions in their stead. And those are just the first 2 steps in the Buddha's 5-step program, the ones that establish the truth of the fact that things are being fabricated in the mind and give you a beginning sense that some fabrications are better than others. This gets carried through with the next steps. You look for the allure of those fabrications. You look for their drawbacks. The allure is why you go for them. These things arise and they pass away, but sometimes you dig them up again. If they're skillful fabrications, that's one thing. But when they're unskillful, why are you digging them up? What's the allure? What does the mind think it's getting out of them? How is it feeding on these things? You have to look carefully, because the mind tends to lie to itself about where it's actually feeding. One way of getting to know is by insisting on the drawbacks of those fabrications until part of the mind objects. When it objects, then you know, okay, it's protecting something, and you can dig further in. When you finally see what the real allure is, and that it's no match for the drawbacks, that's when you gain the escape. That's the 5th step. You develop dispassion for that particular state and you can let it go, and you're freed from it. And as the Buddha points out, you apply these 5 steps first to unskillful thoughts, unskillful fabrications, and then you apply the same process to skillful ones. As he says, with the 5 faculties, you look for their origination, you look for their disappearance, you look for the allure, their drawbacks, and the escape, even from them. That's an advanced stage, but this 5-stage program is something you learn from reading, you learn from studying. So this method of analysis is applicable all across the board. It has lots of ramifications. If you didn't learn how to overcome rebirth through the meditation, where would you learn how to overcome it? So this is how you work through an unskillful thought, unskillful emotion, and the Buddha's there to provide you with all kinds of tools, all kinds of weapons. If you don't study, you're like soldiers without weapons. The enemy comes and you have nothing with which to fight but your bare hands. But when you do have the weapons though, you can protect your fortress, and no matter what comes from which direction, you can guarantee yourself that you'll come out safe.